Definitely. A couple of years ago, we were trying to assist some clients in getting a loan modification. We've since stopped doing that because for that very reason, it was so frustrating in dealing with these lenders. And I don't know if the reason was that they were so overburdened with so many requests, but literally they would, they would lose paperwork. We would submit and resubmit. Months and months would just pass. They would request updated information and then claim not to have received it. And they've basically strung along these people for so long without giving them an answer. And then ultimately, after a certain period of time passes and people are struggling with their payments, they will go ahead and file a foreclosure, even though you're negotiating with another department within the bank for a loan modification. The collection department will just set it over for foreclosure after a certain point in time. And so there was so much frustration on behalf of these poor borrowers who were struggling and really were good candidates and would have certainly kept the property had their loan been modified or the interest rate reduced. So there was a tremendous amount of lost opportunities, and I think the banks really failed insofar as stemming a wave of foreclosures that really were 100% preventable, because most people really want to hang on to their house. It's their castle, it's their home. They don't want to let it go, but if you make it feasible for them. And unfortunately, it's been my experience still, although Obama has revamped it. And there's a Making Homes More Affordable program. The statistics are still that approximately 10 to 12% of loan modification applications get approved, which is a very low number.
And that's very scary.
Yes, that means 90% of people who are asking for this relief are not getting it. And it's only a 2% increase in recent months.
And some of the requirements that you have to pay all bills on time, and then let's look it up. Okay, you get a loan 6.5%, for example, almost 7, and then in that time they're giving loan for 4.5, and they're waiting for interest to raise up above 5, and then can say, oh, by the way, it's not much of change, maybe you should just pay for it.
Right, right. And that's simply an impossibility for some people, because those extra few hundred per month really makes the difference on whether they can afford to live and buy food and pay their other bills. So it's unfortunate, but yeah, that's what lenders have been doing. Now, cases where they do approve them, it's a wonderful solution. But again, that's only 10 to 12% of all the applications that are out there.
I had a case that one of my clients was approved because of hardship. His mom couldn't climb up of the stairs, and he had the legal papers, to show that her mom is not medically capable of coming to the second floor. And so he saved almost $800 a month. He thanked me so much because I was mentioning to him, and I didn't sell his property, but he's still a dear client of mine, and I was really happy that he kept the house, and he.
Oh yes, there's such a feeling of satisfaction being able to help somebody and come up with that solution for them. Like I said, it's a wonderful solution when it does work, and if banks were more open to it, and not worried so much about their investors and what their investors are saying, and really worrying about the borrowers and trying to get some stream of income and maintain it, they would be a lot better off.
I just want to mention about real hardship for people when they have all those credit cards bills pile up, all those loan payments coming up and everything's, and they cannot handle anymore. So bankruptcy is a solution or not?
The answer to that question always depends on that person's individual situation. Sometimes it's absolutely the only solution, the only feasible solution, and the only way out, and the only way to relieve the burdensome pressure. In some cases, though, it's not. And I do multiple consultations each week, and on many of them I'm always very honest in my evaluation if they're not good candidates, and a lot of people are not good candidates. But the factors that it depends on are so situation specific that what might be correct for one person is completely wrong for somebody else. So the answer is it completely depends. It may or may not be a good solution.
We heard that some of the clients can keep the house, keep the car. I'm not talking about people who buy like new Mercedes and ship overseas, but I'm talking about people that have a decent average economy car.
Correct. And that's definitely true. A lot of people have a wrong impression about bankruptcy in general. They think that basically everything is taken away from them, and that's why they don't even consider doing it. But that's just not true. And what you said is correct. About over 99% actually of clients in bankruptcies, people are allowed to keep their car and most of their assets, as long as the equity in those assets are not above a certain limit. And for example, some people, you know, the main issue or the main problem they're having is with credit card debt, but they want to keep the property that they're living in. In other cases, you know, they might not have a lot of debt, but they can no longer handle the mortgage. Well, it's really a matter of, you know, what you can afford to keep, okay? So if you can afford to keep the car or the house, then you can say that that's your intention. And so long as there's not too much equity, for a married couple, they're allowed to keep $30,000 of equity in a house. And for a single filer, it would be 15, half of that. And in cars, joint petitions, $8,000 in personal property and $2,400 per person per car. And most people that have average cars that have a loan on it don't really have that much equity. And so that's the reason why about 99% of filers are allowed to keep their assets. So nobody's coming into their house and taking their property or taking away their cars.
And unfortunately, most of the people who bought property in the last 4 or 5 years don't have much equity.
Yes, yes.
Because property value went down like 20, 30, even 40% in some area, what is
Absolutely.
really scary. So anything else you want to mention about that?
Well, with respect to that, I think it's really important in that anybody who purchased just about anything in the last 5 years is what we call the upside down, in that they owe more on their mortgage than what the property is worth. And that's a source of tremendous frustration for so many of my clients. And it's some of my clients who are really struggling, but even the ones that are not struggling or are able to pay the bills, it still upsets them to think that they owe so much on an asset that's certainly not worth it. And my advice on that is, you know, you really have to evaluate. I'm certainly included in that situation, as I bought a property within the last 5 years too, and it's completely depreciated in value, and it's probably worth about the loan amount on it. But you know, in essence, you know, I'm paying my mortgage. I'm going to continue, and you know, eventually we hope that the situation will stabilize. But the fact that somebody is upside down doesn't mean that they should stop paying their mortgage or let it go. That's what we call a strategic default, and lenders are definitely on the lookout for that. So if somebody just lets a property go because they're frustrated that they owe more than they think it's worth and don't want to pay the mortgage anymore, the bank will foreclose, and there are consequences on the back end of that. So they can be held responsible for the shortage once that property sells, and the bank will go after them for that shortage.
Yeah, I heard of some banks holding that and they don't want to release it. Also, when you sell short sale, when we're talking about that, so
yes.
You have to make sure that they really release you completely.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Although short sales is are an excellent option for struggling borrowers, and I really like it, and I think that it's definitely catching on with lenders. You definitely need somebody on your side negotiating with these short sale lenders. For my clients, I always specifically request in writing that the lender puts it, because some lenders don't, or they use a standard format, but I always request that they put it in writing that once the sale goes through, that they will not pursue the borrower for any deficiency or any shortage. And usually, you know, we're able to successfully negotiate the lender to put that language in those payoffs.
Just make sure to add and not to sell to any collector agency, because what they do, they're selling to some other third party.
Correct,
and,
correct.
Scary.
And so, and that's another thing to keep in mind for people that sometimes just let a property go and let the chips fall where they may. There are a lot of third-party purchasers of these mortgages. So a third-party collector might, you know, purchase the right to collect from a bank for maybe pennies on the dollar, but they're not making those purchases and acquiring those assets if they don't think that they're going to collect on them later. So I think one thing that I want viewers to know is that, you know, they don't have to do it right away, because the situation is bad for everybody now. But down the line, they can wait, and once your situation improves, they can come back and collect from you at a later point in time. So
yeah, that's scary. I was looking in California, it's different law, so they can just leave the key at the bank and walk away.
It's state specific, correct. You know, some states, you know, they're not allowed to go after deficiencies, and some states they are. And Illinois is one of the states where they could go after deficiency judgments.
For example,